Hello everybody. So I've spent this afternoon doing a bit of digging around in the Cottle family history, and I've been going over a few things that I sort of knew already about the Cottle family history and our name's origins and the meaning of our name, because Cottle is quite an unusual name, is it not? It's a name that has 11,500 bearers as a surname worldwide. It's not every day you bump into someone called Cottle. And if you do bump into someone called Cottle, it'll very likely be in the southwest of England, in particularly the counties of Wiltshire and Somerset. So it's not every day you stumble across a Cottle, but I think because of my name, particularly at school, particularly having gone to private schools, one always goes, oh, Cottle, Cottle this, Cottle that, oh, it was Cottle, And just like sort of behind their eyes, I think, and I had it said once explicitly to me that, your name must derive from Cottar or Cotty, which means cottage dweller, i.e. peasant, or like the sort of peasant who lives in a cottage capable of accommodating 4 people and where they can farm 5 to 10 acres of land. I was like, well, so far as like peasantry goes, like that's not such bad peasantry, is it? Like quite swanky peasantry, sure. For a while, went around thinking that, well, yeah, I suppose that probably is the origins of my name. And my mum, I was talking to her earlier, she thought the same. I asked her, what does Cottle mean? She says, oh, Cottle means farmer. I was like, well, all right then. And I am from a farming background, which adds sort of an extra level of hilarity on top of the accusation of being a peasant. Because, it's like agriculture, farming, well, that means peasant, doesn't it? It's like, well, ownership of land and so on, there's a little bit, there's subtleties there and so on. But it turns out, from the research I've done since school, Cottle is not connected to cottage dwelling or peasantry, really. Cottel, the Old French, means knife, and the implication of that is that our family started off as blacksmiths, i.e. armourers making daggers, knives, swords, and crucially eventually chainmail. And there was a sort of cognate link there between the term coeur de maille and Cottle. And the name Cottle, C-O-T-E-L as it was then, is thought to have arrived on these shores following the Norman conquests. So we would have been producing rather a substantial amount of chainmail armour and swords and helmets and whatever else, I imagine, for the Norman invaders. And going along, probably is not really swanky people in the Norman army, not the sort of real Norman rich boys on the cavalry who would have gone on to become earls and dukes and whatnot in William's Britain. But we were rewarded with, I think, probably a barony in Wiltshire, with actually in the village of Atworth, which is I think is probably the Cottle original base of operations. A barony under, I suspect, Lord Bath or his equivalent back then. And the place is called Cottle's Park now, but it's called something different back in the day in the 13th century, and we started occupying it. And we didn't give up that occupation until the 15th century. And we're probably there at about the 12th century, I imagine. So, had a little bit of 400-year reign as minor nobles in the southwest of England. So, peasantry, not exactly, I don't think. Not quite. Not there's anything wrong with being a peasant at all. But, and if that's your origin, it doesn't make you better or worse than anyone else. My origins don't make me better or worse than anyone else. And sort of going through the public school system, they sort of like to dredge up feudal categories for people, to categorise them and sort of venerate that class system a bit. You go, ooh, you're a peasant. It's there is no such thing as a peasant anymore, and there hasn't been for hundreds of years. It's an irrelevant system of categorisation of human beings, and it was an awful system that turned people into chattels, and it's best we've done away with feudalism. It is, yeah, obviously, that's gone, and no, by any reasonable estimation of class, if you must apply the feudal system to modern day human beings, almost everyone is yeomanry. That's what people really are now. Barons don't really exist. But gentry, there's no real such thing. There's not really any such thing anymore. We live in post-industrial society, and it's really annoying for that reason. And anyway. But back to my family history, because I've been doing yet a bit more digging, and it turns out the French name Cottle is a derivative of an earlier name, which, if you must assign me plebeian origins, I suppose you can, since from the distinguished plebeian Roman family, we have Marcus Aurelius Cotta, Cotta, which is thought to have formed part of our lineage also. Was a Roman politician and general who was consul in 74 BC. His half sister was Aurelius Cotta, and she was the mother of Julius Caesar. So, yeah. In our family tree, it seems we have one of the most powerful men in history. And I mean, there's always been something about me, hasn't there? And there's been something about my dad and my sister. So, I don't know what a certain skin tone, possibly. Look at the fucking thing on my face. So there's only one empire in history that produces noses like these, and that's the Roman Empire. And I just got to thinking as well, Cottar, Cotti, where would those sorts of words have arrived on the British Isles from? As I said, many peasants in the medieval period would have been living in wattle huts, straw and wattle huts, not in cottages. What is a cottage? Like a timber frame building, somewhat derivative of a Roman villa. Perhaps, after the mainstay of the Roman forces left, after the Roman occupation, some cottars stuck around doggedly in their sort of timber framed buildings based on Roman designs, to try to innovate still, farmed a few acres of land, and you're a cottar. Or maybe references their jerkins that they wore, cottar, coat, which is what cotta actually means in Latin. So similar to codamai, coat of mail. It's also bound up in some similar sorts of etymological pathways. So yeah, I'm related to Caesar. Quite closely, actually, been a cousin of this Marcus Aurelius Cotta, who was, by the way, a consul of the Roman Empire, so it's not like he was an unimportant dude either. Lucius Aurelius Cotta was his dad, Roman senator and military commander, also consul. Older brother Gaius Aurelius Cotta, Roman statesman, orator, priest, an academic skeptic. Let's look at Gaius a bit more. He was the uncle of Julius Caesar, through Caesar's mother Aurelia. 922 BC, defended his uncle Publius Rutilius Rufus who had been unjustly accused of extortion in Asia. He was on intimate terms with the tribune Marcus Livius Drusus, who was murdered in 91 BC, and the same year was an unsuccessful candidate for the tribunate. Shortly afterwards, he was prosecuted under the Lex Varia, the law opposed by Quintus Varius Severus, who was directed against all who had any wish to support the Italians against Rome. In order to avoid condemnation, went into voluntary exile. Not returned until 82 BC until the dictatorship of Lucius Cornelius Sulla. Sulla? Did you support Sulla? Actually, I support Sulla as well. Fuck Marius. The little shit. Marius, most decorated of all Romans. How could he ever lose? Sulla holding his head with, Ottomans were carrying a law that abolished the Sullan disqualification of the tribunes and the plebeians from holding higher magistracies under Lauda Judiciis Privatis, which nothing is known, was abrogated by his brother Lucius Cotta. Cotta obtained the province of Gaul and was granted to triumph for some victory of which he possesses no details. But on the very day before his celebration, an old wound broke out and he was injured suddenly. According to Cicero, Publius Sulpicius Rufus and Cotta were best speakers of the young men of their time, physically incapable of rising to passionate heights of oratory. Cotta's successes were chiefly due to his searching investigation of facts. He kept strictly to the essentials of the case and avoided all irrelevant digressions. His style was pure and simple. He is introduced by Cicero as an interlocutor de oratore and de natura deorum, as a supporter of the principles of the new academy. The fragments of Sallust contains the substance of speech delivered by Cotta in order to calm the popular anger at the deficient corn supply. It's reasonably interesting. What's his brother Lucius like? Oh, here we go. Big page. Oh, not so big. Roman politician from an old noble family who held the offices of praetor, 70 BC consul, and censor. Father and grandfather of the same name had been consuls, and his two brothers, Gaius Aurelius Cotta, Marcus Aurelius Cotta, preceded him as consul in 75 and 74 BC respectively. His sister Aurelia was married to Gaius Julius Caesar, brother-in-law to Gaius Marius, possibly Lucius Cornelius Sulla, and they were parents of the famous general and eventual dictator Gaius Julius Caesar. While praetor 70 BC, important law reform of the jury list, which the judices were to be selected, not from senators exclusively as limited by Sulla, but from senators, equites, and tribuni arii. I'm not going to read it all. But, don't judge a book by its cover. However, if you are going to judge a book by its cover, i.e., or the title of a book, like the Book of Me, Sam Cottle, at least try to do your research properly, and at least try to fully, tease out the meaning in something as simple as a name. But what is in a name? Who knows? Who knows how far back it could go? And all the little oiks at Dauncey School and the likes of that, who like to take the piss out of me for being a so-called peasant, for either having grown up on a farm or having, a name that sounds a bit like the term cottage dweller, that someone living in a more sophisticated form of accommodation in medieval England than, and it's always the people, isn't it, with the biggest left-wing pretensions, I think, likes of a certain Thompson, son of Tom, or sort of a Goodall, possibly, like Anglo-Saxons or Celts or whatever you are. Whereas, my family were pivotal in the establishment of Western civilization as we know it. So don't do that, and think. And what's in a name? Well, Doesn't mean, anyone is better or worse than anyone else. No, of course not. It is family history. However, Jesus fucking Christ, it's fun when people like you turn out to be wrong. And yes, there's nothing wrong with being a son of Tom. Thompsons have done some brilliant things in history. One of them discovered the electron. That is phenomenal. However, some of us come from smaller, older, well, but not possibly older, but smaller and families that haven't proliferated quite as much and spread quite as prolifically as Thompsons, and sort of remained small for whatever reason, probably having fewer children, I don't know, but and sort of have strange lineages which connect to Julius Caesar. So it's by no means a superiority or inferiority thing. I wouldn't suggest that. But like Cottle, your name means peasant. Like, little more depth there, I think. Just possibly. So thank you very much for watching. I can't wait to tell my dad about this. He's always said it. He's always said we've got Roman features. We've always had Roman noses. We've always had tan skin. We've always had Italianate features, for whatever bizarre reason it is. The Normans as well. Look at bio tapestry, big noses. Romans, look at the hooter on Julius Caesar himself. I'll just quickly Google it, actually. Is it say about the Cottle type, ambitious, tenacious, crosses the Rubicon, spread civilization. Yeah, big old hooter on him. It's pretty sort of Romanish thing in general, isn't it? Cool dude, that Caesar, I think. Sad about his end, but there we go. Can't have it all, can you? Thank you everyone for watching. Bye bye bye. Love you lot.